And the first matter there is a potential statement to be released by their HRA regarding what we call Grandview Green. And Manager Neal, you had a couple of comments I think you wanted to make before we get to Manager Neuendorf, and then also Member Fisher has some comments as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you'll recall, back on September 13th, which is the last time that the HRA was able to meet, we had a proposed statement in front of the HRA regarding Grandview Green and your view of the project, and actually some policy statement around it. We did not have the full HRA present that day. Yeah, a couple of you had conflicts and you were out of town. So you gave us some feedback on that day, and you asked us to bring that feedback back to you for formal adoption of the statement today at this meeting. During that time, Commissioner Staunton, who was not able to be at that meeting in September, has had a chance to review and offer some additional comments, and those comments are in front of you, and we just wanted a chance for you to consider his comments before you make final action on this policy statement. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Staunton, anything that you wish to add? Oh, Member Stewart.
Yeah, I think Member Staunton and I were thinking along the same lines. As I read through the proposed statement, I thought it needed some rewriting. It was my good fortune that Commissioner Staunton was faster than me and did some rewriting. And I thought did an excellent job. So I just wanted to say thank you, Commissioner Staunton, for picking up the pen and doing the work. I really feel a lot more comfortable with the statement as revised. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Staunton.
So just to back up a little bit, I understand this to be proposed as a part of our comprehensive plan for the Grandview district. Is that?
That's
correct.
What
the statement is kind of designed to do.
That's how we will kind of meld it in.
Right. And so I think it's important that we capture where we are so that people years from now will understand what we've done and what our thinking was. And as I thought about this issue, one of the things that there's been some confusion about is whether this is a right now plan or whether this is an off in the future plan. And in particular, when you look at the Grandview transportation study that we accepted back in August of 2016, it talked about the notion of a land bridge or a lid or whatever you want to call it in this area as being a far-term project. And it was really because of transportation technology, transportation infrastructure that would be necessary to support it. So my changes are designed to make it clear that this is something that we've been evaluating as a potential far-term project as opposed to a right-now kind of project. I know there's been some confusion in the community about whether we're building this in 2019 or 2020 or 2021. I want to make it crystal clear to folks that our intent is that this be considered off in the future, not in the current next couple of years. And what I would suggest, along with this language, I'd also ask that we direct staff to discontinue further spending on this project in terms of the research. And I'm thinking in particular, I don't think we need to be advocating at the legislature for any more tax increment financing authority. If there's other cities that want to do that, as the ball has gotten rolling, I'm fine with that. I also think we shouldn't be negotiating any lease terms or anything with MnDOT at this point. I think we've got good research. I think this captures in the comprehensive plan the work that we've done to date and the possibility that this could be explored in the future. So I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, how you want me to go about this, but I'd propose these changes to the statement, and then I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to discontinue further expenditures on near-term projects for the pursuing the list.
I think it could be encompassed in a single motion. Member Brindle wants to or Commissioner Brindle wants to comment, and then I want to ask Commissioner Fisher a question too before we have any kind of a motion. Commissioner Brindle?
Thank you. We received an edited version of the statement as part of our packet, and on the dais, there is a second edited version that is different than the one that we had in our packet. So which one of these are we considering this morning?
So when I saw the packet, then I looked at it and made some suggested edits. So the one on the dais is the edits that I made since the packet came out, and I'm proposing today.
The version in the packet itself had the edits that the HRA offered at the September 13th meeting. So we incorporated those as you requested, and then the additional edits are from Member Staunton, Commissioner Staunton.
Okay. You want to read through those, and I'm going to go to Commissioner Fisher. In conjunction with this Grandview Green issue, you've prepared a presentation this morning, and I'm wondering if you'd prefer that be made, that presentation be made before or after we vote on this matter of language for the comprehensive plan?
I would prefer that be after we're done with our vote.
Right.
But I would like to just say, as to the pending motion, I can agree with what Commissioner Staunton's proposing. I think, my intent or thought behind discussing lease options with MnDOT and even TIF potential with the legislature is really about, is that stuff even possible? Is there a scenario out there that's actually doable? Because those are significant walls or hurdles that any sort of lid like this would have to get over. And, if we want other communities to take the lead on that, I'm okay with that. But I just want to be clear that we weren't ever negotiating, for a deal to be done tomorrow. It was to see what financial mechanisms could actually be put in place, because there's no mechanism for this right now. That's the hurdle that everyone's trying to get over around the state. They're doing this in Rochester right now. They're doing it in a number of places. And perhaps those communities have more momentum and they can take that ball and carry it for a while. I'm okay with that.
And just to follow up on that, I think that's part of what has led to the confusion on this is we're lease terms are necessary to someone exploring how financing might work for a project like this. But when folks in the community hear that, they think we're about to enter into an agreement with MnDOT to build this thing. So in order to eliminate that confusion, I think we should kind of discontinue that for now. But I think it's all consistent with what we've been doing all along, which is exploring the long-term prospects for this kind of project.
Okay. All right. We don't have a motion pending, but here's the way I could see a motion being structured. It would be a motion to approve the recommended language that's in front of us this morning on the dais to be included in the 2018 comprehensive plan regarding Grandview Green, and also discontinue further spending on research of this concept at this particular time. Does that kind of capture?
Yeah, I guess I would say with respect to the future spending, I'd just direct that staff suspend further expenditures on the Grandview Green concept, including but not limited to engagement of consultants to advocate for changes in state law facilitating financing of lids and negotiation of lease language with MnDOT.
Okay. That's that clarifying language is
And I will
helpful.
second the
Thank you.
motion.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second as stated, and Commissioner Staunton will provide that language to staff.
Got it.
So that you have it down correctly. Any further discussion?
And that is the language that's on the dais this evening or this morning.
Any further discussion on this matter? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. And now back to Commissioner Fisher that wants to again, revisit this topic. I think we've gotten some good input from Commissioner Fisher in the past with some of the research that he's done. And we're going to have the benefit of further research this morning with regard to Grandview Green.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, I put together a few slides, and because I anticipated that we would, thank you, Bill. I anticipated that we would pass some sort of resolution to put this language forward in our comp plan. We just talked about how there's nothing that's going to happen here except in the far term. We've just talked about the fact that we're expending money on this, but I can assure you, based on past experience, that the message that will come out after this meeting is that Grandview Green is moving forward, because we have passed a resolution with language about Grandview Green. So I want to make it extremely clear what we're doing, but more importantly, I want to talk about why we do it. Why are we pushing language forward that talks about something that some people in our community don't care for and they don't understand? And I just want to take a few minutes to do it, because the question is, why are we messing with this beautiful little piece of infrastructure? Why would we want something better or different there? When you stand on the hilltop parking lot looking across to City Hall, why would we contemplate changing that? We talk about traffic on 50th and how it can only get worse. I would argue that traffic on 50th is horrible, because where in this scenario do you see somebody walking or riding a bike or doing anything but getting in their car to move through our community? Or on this bridge, these are the two ways that you connect between one side of this highway and the other. So when we're creating these environments where we want people to spend time, how are they going to do it other than by car? We've expended money and time in the past to do this planning. This is 2012 Grandview planning. I can assure you this will take 30 years just to build out what's in that picture, not talking about what might go over this highway. So why is it important that when we draw streets on the west side of that highway, that we put them in places and consider the impacts if there were a cover over the highway? We got to know that early, right? Before we invest millions in those streets. So we talk about the future. We talk about 30 years or more out into the future, and that's hard to predict. It's hard to know, but we can learn a lot from the past. We've been hearing people talking about, goodness, they're talking about us being a bedroom community. I don't think we are, right? But there's this sense that we've always been this way. And I think it's really important to look to the past and understand how dramatically we change constantly. This is one of my favorite pictures because it's our anniversary with Southdale this year, 60 years ago. The thing I want you to notice in this picture, 1958, you know, I live over in that neighborhood that looks a lot like a field, right, to the upper right. And notice the lack of trees. That's the most amazing thing when I look at these old photos, is how few trees there were in Edina. And I think we've changed a little bit over those 60 years. Can anyone tell me where this is? 1951. It's where we're talking about right now. That was simply, I'm going to go back. That was an intersection of Highway 100 and 169. Looks like two country roads not that long ago. Yeah, I look out, there are people in this audience, not me, I'm super young. There are people here in this room that drove on these roads. But we're changing dramatically. Anyone tell me where this is? Just look in the middle of the photo. There's a little dot in the middle of the photo.
France gone to 494. Yeah.
That was France Avenue and 100. When I looked at by the way, these historic photos are all from the Minnesota Historical Society. The back of that photo said France and 100, and I said that's not possible. Those two don't intersect. But back in the day, 100 was the belt line around the Twin Cities. They actually did intersect, and it's right about where 494 is today. Last one, I think. Anyone can tell me where this is? 1958. That's France Avenue, looking south, right around 70th. Today, we're debating and having great consternation whether we should have a building that's 10 feet higher than the one on the right. And think about what got us there and the amount of change that it took to make that happen. So what I want to talk about very briefly, why do we plan for these things 30 years in the future? Right now, we have this convergence of what I would call these three revolutions: shared mobility, electrification, and automation. Shared mobility, Uber and Lyft today carry more passengers than every taxi company in the country. That's a dramatic shift in just the last few years. And that shift is happening because of these things right here. This phone cost me about $700. 20 years ago, this is $700,000 of technology. 20 years from now, this would be about $7, right? All of this stuff is changing dramatically because of this technology and our shared economy. The battery-powered automobiles, we can actually afford now to go buy a Tesla that's an incredibly powerful computer. It's got 27 moving parts, can go 1 million miles. Just think about what it's going to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. The prices are coming down. This is a technology available to us. And then, of course, the automation, the autonomous vehicles, and what they're going to do to our streets. You take these three things together, and they're going to completely transform how we think about transportation. This has not happened since 1900. This is a complete revolution in terms of how we're going to move around. Ford is now a mobility company. They're getting out of the car selling business. They're into the mobility business. Waymo is looking at how they're going to launch a ride-hailing service with autonomous vehicles. Toyota and Uber are partnering on automated vehicle technologies and moving people. These General Motors, same thing. All of these businesses are investing billions of dollars to change the way we move around. Mercedes-Benz actually has their concept car actually has all the seats facing the center, so you can have a conference while you're going to work rather than waiting to get to work. So why am I sharing all this? This stuff is all, I've read hundreds of articles on this. The experts are talking about this can happen in the next 15 years. That's why we're saying we're not going to do anything for 30 years, because we're going to figure out what's going to happen in between. We have to keep our options open. If you don't think this can happen in 15 years, this is one of my favorite set of photos. In this photo, you see this is Fifth Avenue, New York City, 1900. There's one car in that photo. It's all horses. And back at the time, there were cars, they were around, but they weren't reliable. There weren't the legal mechanisms to really get them on the road with horses safely, to figure that transition out. They were priced at a point where it wasn't, the average person couldn't afford it. And people said, there's no way I'm getting rid of my horse. That's not happening. 1900. 1913, 13 years later, there's one horse on that street. This stuff can happen very quickly. And so you might say, well, what does that mean? Well, the experts say, in these articles, it's pretty interesting. Some of the experts say between 35 and 85% fewer vehicles could be on our streets and highways, and that parking lots won't be as necessary. Now, I don't know what those numbers, that seems crazy that 85% fewer vehicles will be on our streets and highways. There's another set down below, I might comment, without appropriate regulations, we could have more vehicles on our streets, right? So we don't know which one it's going to be. I'm really hoping it's the first one, right? I'm hoping that we can be smarter with how things are regulated and what we do with this technology, where we can densify, we can put housing and things in areas like this that are devoted to cars. And I would just, Tony Seba is an economist from Stanford, and he has this great presentation. And I've got lots of resources that I'll share with you after, but talks about, in the corporate world, a company like Kodak. In 1975, Kodak invented digital photography. But they were so invested, they had 89% of the market share on traditional film photography. So they actually, the very technology they invented, they actually put it in the back because they couldn't move beyond what, they were the leaders. And Tony Seba says the most dangerous position to be when there's this huge technological shift is in the leadership position. It's the worst spot to be because you don't want things to change. You're so happy with the way you are that you don't see it coming until it's too late. And I would argue that's where Edina is, right? We are a great place to live. That's why people are so invested and so concerned about us planning for things that look different, because they love what we have today. But I would argue that's the dangerous position to be in. Yes, we can love what we have today. We have a comp plan that says 90% of our community, single-family neighborhoods, we don't want that to change. But we have 10% of our community that we have to change. We can change and make it better and be proactive and think about what the future is. And I would argue that that's our job. So I would say the city council, or in this case the HRA, we can't predict the future. I don't think we would ever pretend we could. But we have a job to do, and that is to anticipate the future. And what we just did by putting that language in our comp plan is trying to anticipate the future, trying to make sure that anything we do between now and 30 years from now, we're doing it the right way, and we're doing it where we could someday, who knows, maybe someday there is a lid over our highway someplace, or there'll be many other things we're going to talk about in our comp plan. It's all about anticipating. So that's what I got.
All right, thank you. That was excellent. Thank you very much for doing that.
I just would add, I've got 3 pages of sources where all of this came from, and hopefully this can be up on the website. People can go and read this stuff. I'm not making it up. It's really happening out there.
All right, and then with respect to our council meeting upcoming, you've got another presentation I think you intend to make there as well.
Yeah, during council comment on Tuesday night's meeting, I'm going to talk about the pace of change, which is also making people uncomfortable.
Okay, all right, good. Comments? Well, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, terrific stuff. Thanks, Mike.